Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to show you the top 10 art creatures with special abilities. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? In at number 10 we have got the Thler, and the reason why I'm putting this creature here is I just think it is so valuable to the art community, and also just as a general creature you can get so much use and versatility out of this creature, and it also does spawn on the island as well, so it is hugely accessible to all you Ark players out there, as everyone does have the island obviously. These things spawn in the redwoods and are a relatively easy tame. There'll be pretty much no issues there as long as you do prepare for it. Some people say that these are quite difficult, but for me I've never found them difficult whatsoever. And if you just prepare, make yourself a decent trap and be careful and find one and actually look and be careful of the environment around you, then once you've found one you can just knock it off of a tree by aggroing it, and then after that just lead it into the trap and trank it out. It is as simple as that, and it really does not get any harder than that, apart from if there's a lot more hostile things in your area. You definitely do want to prepare for this. Again, it's all really in the preparation. If you prepare properly, you're going to have yourself a much better taming experience, and you are going to love this creature once you've actually got your hands on one. These things are fast and have insane amounts of mobility. They can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface, and they also do have the bleed ability, which really does play quite a huge part in this creature's role of being a great special ability creature, as this really does drive it forward and gives it great damage output against other creatures, and it really elevates it as a creature. Sadly, it's not allowed into bosses, but still you can get insane amounts of use out of this creature, and it really does have to be on the list here for this reason, and I can't have left it out. Next up we have got ourselves the UT, and this creature is so useful for doing any kind of boss fights with its special ability that I have to include it here. Although there are loads of other creatures with really cool other special abilities as well, I still do have to merit some of the obvious ones, and the UT is an extremely obvious one, with its courage roar aiding your creatures in battle, allowing you to deal more damage to the enemy opponent, probably a boss, considering you'll be using these things for boss fights, but it could also just be all those general minions as well that the boss will spawn if it does spawn those. And also on top of that, it does have a fear roar as well, which you can use to ward off enemies of certain sizes, although obviously again there is a size limit on that, so it's not really going to work. You can't just get the broodmother to run away from you by enacting the fear roar, but still you can use that thing to great use, and I would recommend that you do use it in some boss fighting scenarios. It really can be useful in some cases for just deflecting off some of the minions if you really do need to hold back and, you know, give some space for you to get through. Sometimes it can help fix you getting stuck in a boss fight, which is useful, but you're mainly going to want to use that courage roar, and obviously that's just going to buff up your creatures and they're going to take less damage, and it's really going to be useful for you. Next up we have got the Mwing, and this creature is here just because it is so useful for any kind of travel up in the air, and that really does make it such a great special ability creature. Maybe you might consider gliding not to be a special ability, but I do, and it does act as a portable feeding trough as well, so if that doesn't count as a special ability, then I don't really know what your definition of special ability is, because not really any other creatures have the ability to do that, and therefore it is quite inherently special, unique as well. But that gliding ability is found on creatures like rock drakes, but I just find it easier to control on things like the Mwing, and the Mwing is definitely a star creature when it comes to travel. Like I said, it just gains so much speed, and you can tame it so early on. Very easy tame as well, dead cheap to trap, so easy to trank out, and you're really going to have no issues with taming this thing whatsoever. The only real downside is the maps that it spawn on, because maybe they're not the most friendly to get because they cost money. Not sure if they're on pre-order though. If they are on pre-order, then it's not too much an issue, but if they're only on Gen 2, then you're just going to have to get Gen 2 to get one of these things, but they might be on pre-order considering how successful these things were as creatures. Next up, we have got the Snow Owl, and this creature is here for its healing ability. It really is like, it's so priceless in a sense. Like, it's so invaluable. I just can't live without having this ability on an Arc creature. And although maybe it's not the most inventive one out there, it does definitely have a wealth of them for you to experience. So, you know, it's not going to get so high up on the list, but I think it does at least deserve that number 7 spot, at least, because, you know, you can just get insane use out of this creature, and it's just going to be so useful for you over all of your Arc playing. It really is going to pack a huge amount of punch with that gliding ability first, so you can really get some speed on it. Also does have some sort of infrared, like heat seeking ability, you could say, and that is going to just allow you to seek out any kind of organism that gives off heat, which I'm pretty sure is every single creature in the game. Useful for PvP if you're trying to track down players, or PvE scenarios when you're just trying to find some smaller creatures that are lost. You can kind of use it like night vision as well. You also want to crank up that stamina, because these things freeze and heal creatures, that being wild creatures, your own creatures, or enemy creatures. Don't know why it heals up some enemy creatures unless you maybe just feel bad for them, but for your tame creatures that's pretty self-explanatory. But for wild creatures, maybe it's not if you haven't really played much Arc, but either way, if you're trying something out and, you know, its health isn't particularly doing that great, then you can just get one of these things and heal it up, and boom, you're going to have yourself a healed tame, and its torpor's really not going to go down that much, and your tame experience is just going to be a lot nicer. You can also use the snow owl pellets on things like gachas to get some insane loot out of them, so if you haven't already, get yourself a snow owl. Next up, we have got the Astrod Delphus, and I think this creature really does just play quite a huge role in general Arc playing, and also it really does just aid in any kind of transportation around the map, as they can move at incredibly fast speeds, which is obviously extremely useful. The Rhinogatha is another great creature here, but I kind of do prefer the Astrod Delphus on quite a lot of levels. Not in terms of model design and looks, the Rhinogatha is better there, but it's a lot more acrobatic, and for me, somehow, I just find it a lot easier to control, and I like how it just generally moves around. The animations are nice, and obviously the model does look pretty cool as well. Your only real downside is that saddle level, and taming it might seem a little bit expensive on the first hand, but you know, it isn't the worst of the worst, especially considering you're on Gen 2 when you're taming these things realistically. Again, not sure if they're on Fjorda, they might be on Fjorda, but Gen 2 is really easy for getting any kind of element, so it's not going to be too much of an issue whatsoever, at least most of the time. But yeah, really fast, really agile flying mount, and I do just really like this. It's like in a lot of ways the Astrod, but it does a different job and better. At number 5, we have got the Rhinogatha, and this creature is here just because it is so packed with features, and I really do have to merit it for all of that. It does stand as a very great special ability creature, being able to pick up creatures of such great sizes up to things like Rexes and Paraceratheriums. It also kind of shoots a sort of lasery projectile-y thing, and I guess you might not classify that as a special ability. It's a little bit weaker on the side of special abilities, but for me that does, especially the picking up creatures of such large sizes. That is an ability which no other creature really does have, and that is just a really cool one, really inventive in a lot of ways. Maybe not the most creative, but it definitely adds quite a new, different dimension to the game, especially considering in ASA at the moment, cryopods aren't a thing, so this is your only way of really transporting those big creatures around the map, unless obviously you're using a Quetzal with a platform saddle, but obviously that creature is not on the list, and the Rhinogatha is in a lot of ways just the more convenient option. Its taming method is just the exact same as the Reapers, except it impregnates a dino. The Bronto is preferable, at least from my exploration, and also you need a lot of resources as well if you want 100% effectiveness. They were on screen there, but I don't really think they are too necessary to tame these things, as you're not going to be using them in bosses and things like that. So there's not really a point, in my opinion, to get 100% effectiveness. Even if I was taming a boss creature, I probably wouldn't even bother to get 100% effectiveness. Just feed it like a better food. In this case, obviously, it's not going to need really food. It is going to have cravings where you can give it those resources to get 100% effectiveness, but for my purposes, I don't really think it's that useful, and I've never done it myself. And I definitely do prefer the Reaper's gathering XP, because it feels like a bit more of a challenge in some way, and also being more enjoyable at the time, because it really does give you a lot of incentive, as it's something you do throughout the game to level up, but now you're doing it on a Reaper, and that's just, it works for me, whereas this not quite as much, but really inventive, cool special ability creature. Next up, we have got the Reaper, and this thing is just so good with its special abilities. It can slow down creatures with its tail attack, and also on top of that, it is just generally a really cool creature. And although maybe it doesn't have the hugest amount of special abilities, the only real one you could be saying is that tail attack. I've put it so high on the list because it's simply such a great creature, and I'm pretty sure it can kind of go underground as well, or you might not be able to do that. I might be sounding really stupid when saying that if I look at the Reaper's abilities. Let me just quickly search up Reaper arc abilities, because I need to refresh my mind. Yes, they can burrow underground, and then they can do those acidic projectiles. There we go. I was right, not sounding completely stupid, but yes, those two abilities, really cool and inventive, on top of an already pretty much near perfect creature, and especially with that amazing taming method, really was a huge innovator of the time. It does deserve to be on the list for the best special ability creatures, and especially considering there's an R version on Gen 2, so they're ridiculously easy to tame now. Everyone can really get their hands on them as long as they have Arboration or Gen 2. Next up, in at number 3, we have got the Shadow Mane, and this creature is just jam-packed full of all kinds of abilities. It really does deserve a spot on the list, and obviously that is why I'm putting it here. It's just, it has the hydration buff, it has insane amounts of mobility. Its taming method, in a sense, you wouldn't really call a special ability, but definitely is something new, special, and interesting. Maybe not so new anymore, considering Gen 2 came out at least a good year and a half ago, 2 years maybe. I'm not actually sure of the date. I think it was summer of 2022, so about a year and a half. They also do have the ability to charge up their damage over time. They can go invisible as well. Obviously, they have the pack buff, no bleed ability, have the hydration buff though, so they really are packed with the stuff. And also on top of all of that as well, they're great swimmers, and they really are a creature which I think you should be going out for, and you should be getting in your arc progress as long as you can bear that taming method. But trust me, it really is worth it. They're great boss creatures and just great all-rounders. In at number 2, we have got the Desmose Dracula, and this thing is here pretty much just for its sanguine elixir. It really does just aid it so much as a creature with a special ability. It makes it insanely easy to tame creatures like Bloodstalkers, which is actually one of my favourite creatures, and I probably should have put it on this list, considering you could definitely count it as having a special ability, but I guess I'll give it an honourable mention now. I definitely do think it deserves it, as long as creatures like the Velonosaur, the Managama, those creatures are some really great suggestions as well, and I love those creatures to have in my Arc arsenal, and they really do have some nice, great special abilities on them. But the Desmose here has the gliding ability and go invisible as well, although it can't do that in the Wasteland Spine because there is no night cycle, because it can only do that at night. It can also grapple onto any kind of wall or vertical surface, and it can farm blood bags and can craft sanguine elixir, so it really is just such a go-to creature for being an Arc special ability tame. And finally, in at number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this will always top my lists for Arc special ability creatures, depending on what the new creatures bring though. Who knows, maybe they could top the charts after this, but really this is just my go-to special ability creature. It has high amounts of mobility and really doesn't break the bank when it comes to taming these things, requiring such little amounts of resource, and also really not too much technical difficulty as well. Maybe not the easiest in the world, requiring you to go to the Chalk Cliffs biome and steal an egg out of the nests of the Deinonychus, and then obviously escaping them without dying, but it honestly isn't too bad, especially if you have yourself a crossbow and a grappling hook. You can just grapple yourself up into the cliffs, and it really is going to be a quite easy time for you. And if you have a Pteranodon as well, that is going to make this stuff even easier. And then once you have one, you have such a mobile creature which is capable of doing tons of bleed damage to bosses, and it can also grapple onto all kinds of big creatures as well, inflicting even more bleed damage. These things also do not take full damage, which is just a nice bonus for me. They have the pack buff as well, which again does aid them in defeating bosses and just general damage dealing, and they can climb up any kind of wall, vertical surface, things like that, although maybe not as elegantly as something like the Thler. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but after that you really don't notice it, and I hugely enjoy the Thler, not the Thler, the Deinonychus. I do enjoy the Thler, but the Deinonychus more so, and that's why it's in at number 1. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed, as I definitely did enjoy making it. And as always, comment down below what is your favourite special ability arc tame, and if you didn't agree with this list, put your 10 in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.